after spending a night out in the historic downtown of Franklin, Tennessee. Ashley Crois was walked to her Jeep by a friend in the early morning hours of June the 18th of 2020. The woman hugged her friend goodbye, then entered her car and drove away without switching on her headlights. Minutes later, as she reached Franklin Road in Brentwood, Crois, who was driving in the wrong lane, crashed head-on into a police car coming from the opposite direction. First responders found 30-year-old Officer Destin Leguiza pinned inside his patrol cruiser with devastating injuries. The man was taken to the Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. Leguiza was the only officer to die on duty in the department's 50-year history. In the accident's wake, Crois had her blood drawn, and after the sample was tested, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation concluded the woman had a blood alcohol content of 0.166, roughly double the legal limit. She was charged with vehicular homicide by intoxication, vehicular homicide with 0.08% blood alcohol content or greater, vehicular homicide by reckless conduct, and reckless aggravated assault resulting in death. In February of 2020, she was found guilty of all counts and sentenced to 8 years in prison with parole eligibility after serving 30% of her sentence. Number 6. Enrique Lopez. In the early morning of January the 21st of 2024, Enrique Lopez took his Chrysler 300 for a ride in the Bronx neighborhood of New York City. He drove to an area of Hunts Point that was reportedly known as a rendezvous spot for thrill-seeking drivers who performed donuts, drifts, and other car tricks, which they recorded and posted on social media. At around 3:30 a.m., a crowd gathered to watch 23-year-old Lopez do stunts while having 3 people in his car. 21-year-old Gilvonte Roberson was in the passenger seat and 2 teenage girls were in the back seat. While Lopez was speeding around in the area, his vehicle hit a dip in the road. Lopez was spotted swerving uncontrollably before he was catapulted into a fuel truck that was parked near the intersection of Bryant and Viale Avenues. Photos from the scene showed the Chrysler after it had turned into a mangled wreck. The owner of the total truck, a man only identified as Chip, later told a media outlet, "I saw what happened right after the accident. I saw how many kids were outside trying to open the doors." First responders rushed Lopez and all his passengers to the hospital. Roberson and one of the teenagers, Sabrina Villagomez, were pronounced dead. The thrill-seeking driver remained in stable condition at Harlem Hospital, and the second teenage girl was taken to St. Barnabas Hospital in critical condition, where she was placed into a medically induced coma. Subsequent investigations would reveal that the Chrysler had been fitted with an engine stolen from a Dodge Hellcat. Lopez was arrested and charged with manslaughter, criminal possession of stolen property, criminally negligent homicide, and endangering the welfare of a child. During his arraignment in February of 2024, he entered a not guilty plea, and his next appearance in court was scheduled for June the 5th. Number 5. Cameron Hughes. On July the 7th of 2023, 23-year-old Cameron Hughes went to pick up his teenage cousin, Bonnie Barrow, from Manchester, England, and bring her to Great Harwood for a family dinner. As he drove her in his Mercedes Sprinter van, Hughes proceeded to inhale nitrous oxide, commonly known as laughing gas, from a balloon. Barrow recorded the 23-year-old on her cell phone, and the video would show him barely keeping his eyes on the road as he laughed, danced, and texted on his phone. While speeding on the A56 near Accrington, the young man lost control of the car when he tried to navigate a left-hand bend. He drove into the shoulder, straddled the lanes, and then bounced his van off a curb at the edge of the carriageway at 60 miles per hour. The van plunged 16 feet into a ravine. Hughes was thrown from the vehicle on impact but only suffered minor injuries. Barrow was left in critical condition and she was transported to Wythenshawe Hospital, where she died a day later. Following the accident, Hughes was arrested and charged with causing death by dangerous driving. He pleaded guilty, and in October of 2023, he was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. Hughes was also banned from driving for another 8 years. In a tribute to Barrow, her family said that Hughes had one job that day: to get Bonnie home to us safely, but he made dangerous choices that led to her death. Number 4. Joan Smith. On December the 1st of 2022 at around 11 a.m., 92-year-old Joan Smith got into her grey Mitsubishi Lancer and drove away from the Carlingford Court shopping centre in northwest Sydney, Australia. When she turned into Rembrandt Street in Carlingford, the elderly woman mounted the curb and ploughed into a group of teenagers that were heading to the centre. One of them, Calvin Wijiwira, was thrown into a Toyota Hiace, which was parked in a driveway. First responders tended to Wijiwira, but the teenager died at the scene. One of his friends sustained a non-fatal head injury in the incident's aftermath. Smith told officers that she believed a mechanical fault with the vehicle caused her to drive into the group of teenagers. However, the police investigation revealed the woman had mistakenly stepped on the gas pedal instead of the brake. Smith accepted the outcome and pleaded guilty to a charge of negligent driving causing death. The woman apologized for her fatal mistake in court. After sentencing Smith to a 12-month good behavior order, Magistrate Christopher Halberd said she had one of the best driving records he'd ever seen, with only one traffic violation in over 55 years of driving. He described the case as exceptionally sad, but argued given the circumstances that it would have been improper for the 92-year-old to be jailed. Number 3. Jessica Stahl. 46-year-old Jessica Stahl was driving her Pontiac Grand Prix on Parker Road in Parker, Colorado at around 2 a.m. on June the 16th of 2022. Upon reaching the intersection of Parker Road and Cottonwood Drive, the woman failed to notice a couple on the crosswalk and slammed her vehicle into them. After the collision, Stahl exited the car, walked up to the man, who was not hurt in the crash, and, referring to his critically injured partner, asked, "Did I hit her?" Stahl then got back into her car without calling 911 and remained inside for roughly 6 minutes, offering no assistance towards the victim. When law enforcement arrived at the scene and approached the woman's car, she sped away. Officers had to chase her at high speeds for over a mile before Stahl pulled over. The woman, who had a young child in her car, exhibited obvious signs of intoxication during her interactions with law enforcement. She was taken to a nearby hospital for tests, but nurses were unable to draw blood from her because her veins were heavily damaged from drug use. Medical staff claimed they had never seen such extensive track marks and such a degree of wear and tear. Deputy District Attorney Sherry Giger later stated that 2 nurses with more than 40 years of combined experience couldn't draw blood. Staff had to collect a urine sample from Stahl, which showed illicit drug use, including heroin, methamphetamine, Vicodin, fentanyl, Suboxone, and diphenhydramine in her system. The woman Stahl had struck, 25-year-old Lacey Lewis, died several hours later. Stahl was convicted of vehicular homicide DUI, vehicular assault DUI, child abuse, leaving the scene of an accident involving serious bodily injury, and leaving the scene of an accident causing death. She was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Today's topic was inspired by the J-Mall 88, Phantom Scorpio 2008, Dove Master, Tamika Davis 6641, Nebra Lester 1368, and Nikki 123BXD. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Aaliyah Sierra. On the evening of July the 13th of 2017, teenager Aaliyah Sierra picked up 4 of her friends for a drive in her 2007 Honda Accord. While traveling on West Country Road 300 North in Clinton County, Indiana, the 18-year-old was speeding at over 100 miles per hour. After avoiding several obstacles, her vehicle became airborne and slammed into the side of a home, went through the family living room, and almost came out the other side of the structure. 2 people inside the home, a teenager and her younger sister, became trapped under Sierra's car. The victims, Haley and Callie Fullerton, were both killed on impact. Their mother was airlifted to an Indianapolis hospital with multiple injuries, including an item protruding from her chest. Detectives determined that Sierra was driving at a speed of 107 miles per hour when she crashed into the home. 3 of her passengers were interviewed during the investigation that followed and said they had asked to be let out of the car when Sierra began to drive unsafely and that they'd pleaded for her to slow down but were ignored. The teenager was charged as an adult with 10 felony charges, including 2 counts of causing death while operating a vehicle under the influence of a controlled substance. A urine sample screen revealed the teenager had opiates in her system. In September of 2018, Sierra pleaded guilty to 2 counts of reckless homicide and her other charges were dismissed. She received a 6-year sentence with 2 years in prison, followed by 2 years on community correction in home detention and 2 years on probation. If you think drivers can't get deadly enough, then find out what happens when people playing real-life GTA goes wrong. Stay tuned till after number 1 to find out. Number 1. Jayana Webb. On the morning of March the 1st of 2022, Jayana Webb was pulled over by 2 state troopers for driving at 110 miles per hour in a 50 mile per hour zone on I-95 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Shortly after talking to Webb, the troopers, 29-year-old Brandon Siska and Martin Mack, aged 33, were called away. They were sent to help Reyes Riviera Oliveras get to safety as he was trying to cross I-95 on foot near Lincoln Financial Field. After being dismissed, Webb posted on social media about being pulled over for speeding, writing, "Why the cop pull me? And he say I'm doing 110 in a 50. Moments later, she sped into the area where the troopers were assisting 28-year-old Oliveras and tried to blow past them. Webb lost control of her vehicle, plowing into the 2 men and the pedestrian, killing all 3 on impact. She was arrested, and blood test results indicated that her BAC was more than double the legal limit at the time of the crash. In a tweet from January of 2022, the 23-year-old had written, "If you ask me, I'm the best drunk driver ever." A forensic toxicologist said Webb's blood also contained traces of marijuana. In November of 2023, the 23-year-old pleaded guilty to 3 counts of 3rd-degree murder and homicide by vehicle while driving under the influence. Webb received a sentence of 27.5 to 60 years in prison, but because she was 7 months pregnant at the time, she was permitted to remain free until she gave birth. Afterwards, the woman was allowed to spend some time bonding with her child before reporting to the prison to execute her sentence in mid-March of 2024. In the wake of a series of carjackings and a 75-mile police pursuit in Castle Rock, Colorado, Ryan Cole Stone was sentenced to 160 years behind bars. The 28-year-old, who was wanted on drug charges, triggered the chase on the morning of March the 13th of 2014. At a Longmont gas station, Stone reportedly stole an SUV which contained a toddler. He then proceeded to drive at a high speed, covering 75 miles over the course of an hour, during which multiple law enforcement agencies chased after him. A glimpse of the chaotic incident that would later go viral on social media showed Stone jumping out of the vehicle before forcibly pulling 2 people out of a minivan and driving off with it. The man subsequently caused multiple collisions and eventually needed to continue on foot. The pursuit, which crossed over 5 counties, finally ended in Lone Tree, where Stone was apprehended. The man was facing 20 criminal counts, including attempted 1st-degree murder for causing serious injuries to an officer. In April of the following year, Stone was found guilty of attempted manslaughter. He was also convicted of assault, leaving the scene of an accident, causing serious bodily injury, and 2 robberies. He was ordered to serve his lengthy prison sentence at the Department of Corrections. Number 10. Javier Havern Cummins. After stealing 2 police cruisers, 33-year-old Florida man Javier Havern Cummins triggered a multi-county car chase on May the 6th of 2021. Cocoa police were responding to a disturbance call at a motel when Cummins got behind the wheel of a patrol car and took off. According to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, one of their officers joined the chase and used his cruiser to push the stolen sedan off Interstate 95. The car subsequently became stuck in the woods, so Cummins got out and stole another Cocoa unit, this time an SUV. Officers held him at gunpoint and ordered him to get out. Nevertheless, he floored it and continued driving north for at least 8 more miles. After units successfully deployed stop sticks, Cummins ran off the highway and into a muddy median where he was eventually captured. Following his arrest, deputies said that Cummins told them he'd been given permission to take the Cocoa patrol car through mental telepathy. The man was booked into the Volusia County Jail on 2 counts of grand theft of a motor vehicle, 2 counts of grand theft of a firearm, and escape, as well as other charges. The following day, when Cummins was denied bond, he had an emotional outburst in which he cried, "Illuminati, help!" before being removed from the courtroom. Reports indicated that Cummins had shown signs of mental health issues stemming from using crystal meth and a lack of sleep over a 24-hour period. Number 9. Stolen Hyundai Elantra. Following a multi-vehicle crash, emergency personnel were forced to shear the roof off of a Hyundai Elantra that had careened through the streets of New York City in order to pull out 6 teens who were trapped inside. The incident unfolded in Washington Heights at around 6:45 a.m. on July the 3rd of 2023. The Hyundai, which had been reported stolen a month earlier, was racing through the streets and running red lights. Somewhere along Audubon Avenue, the teen driver lost control and slammed it into a Jeep on West 179th. The cars subsequently ricocheted into 2 other parked cars. Multiple vehicles were overturned and one careened onto the sidewalk as debris scattered across the road. After being rescued by emergency medical services, the injured victims, including the 53-year-old driver of the Jeep, were rushed to a hospital. Later that day, 2 teens from the Hyundai were pronounced dead at New York Presbyterian Columbia Hospital. As of recent updates, the New York Police Department was investigating to determine the cause of the accident. Number 8. Kevin Idom. 18-year-old Kevin Idom from Ohio was shot by a Euclid police officer on June the 7th of 2023. Law enforcement spotted a stolen Hyundai Sonata shortly before 12:30 p.m. and initiated a traffic stop. The vehicle fled and was chased by 2 officers near East 222nd Street and Fox Avenue at the Kenwood Village Apartments. The suspect rammed into a few marked and unmarked police vehicles during the pursuit. When the Hyundai, driven by Idom, was cornered, he exited the vehicle and pointed a gun at the officers before attempting to make a run for it. Police chased him for a short distance, then one of the officers opened fire, hitting the teen suspect's leg. After Idom was restrained, the officers rendered medical aid. Idom was then transported to an area hospital for further treatment. According to Euclid Municipal Court records, the young man was facing a charge of felonious assault. 2 other teens were also in the vehicle during the incident. One was taken into custody while the other fled but later surrendered himself to authorities. The officer who pulled the trigger was reportedly placed on temporary administrative leave as per department policy. In light of recent evidence, namely police body cam footage of the incident, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations was examining the shooting to determine if the officer lawfully discharged his weapon. Number 7. Delanio Martin. A federal civil rights investigation was launched after a black teen was fatally shot by the U.S. Park Police in Washington, D.C. on March the 18th of 2023. At approximately 9 a.m., a park police officer and a sergeant responded to a report of a stolen vehicle. The officers conferred on how to deal with the suspect who'd been dozing off behind the wheel of a car with a running engine. The officers ultimately decided to stealthily enter the vehicle in an attempt to detain the driver while he was still dazed. Subsequently, the suspect stepped on the gas and sped away from the scene with one of the officers in the back seat. The latter gave verbal commands for the driver to pull over, saying, "Stop or I'll shoot." Seconds later, multiple shots were fired by the officer, causing the suspect to lose control and crash into a residence. After pulling the driver out of the vehicle, officers called for medical assistance and began administering aid, including chest compressions. However, the teen, later identified as Delanio Martin, died at the scene. Both officers, whose names weren't immediately released, were taken to the hospital. They were later placed on paid administrative leave as the Metro Police Department conducted an internal investigation. After police body cam footage of the incident was released, the FBI and federal prosecutors began investigating the matter. which they reportedly referred to as extremely upsetting. Number 6. Sierra Hibbert. Harrowing police camera footage showed a Georgia woman plowing her SUV into police cars on July the 15th of 2022, while a small child sat in the back seat. Byron police officers were dispatched to the scene after receiving reports of an SUV driving erratically and veering into oncoming traffic on Highway 42. Officers spotted the vehicle at the intersection of routes 42 and 49, where witnesses had successfully stopped it. The 24-year-old driver, Sierra Hibbert, was apparently uncooperative. Law enforcement blocked the SUV between other vehicles to prevent her from leaving. Viral dashcam video showed the moment Hibbert subsequently gunned the SUV in reverse and struck a car behind her. She then drove away, almost hitting witnesses at the scene. Hibbert's SUV went on to hit several police cars during the course of her escape attempt. After finally stopping Hibbert, officers placed her under arrest. Police body cam footage showed Hibbert several times claiming she didn't do anything. Subsequent reports revealed that no one was injured in the incident. According to the police, the woman was facing 6 counts of aggravated assault. She was accused of colliding with an officer, 2 witnesses and 3 Byron police cars. As of the latest updates, the Peach County Sheriff's Office was handling the investigation. Number 5. Tegan Bully. Englishwoman Tegan Bully avoided prison despite leading police on a high-speed car chase through Totten Town on the evening of January the 15th of 2021. The 29-year-old caught the attention of officers in an unmarked vehicle when she broke a 40-mile-per-hour limit to overtake them. When they chased after her BMW, Bully ran through red lights at speeds of up to 90 miles per hour. At the time, Bully reportedly had her partner and 2 children in the car with her. The man allegedly urged her to continue driving and began to make threats if she stopped. At one point, police saw her stop briefly as the man got out of the vehicle and fled on foot. She then drove on the wrong side of the road, causing officers to abandon the pursuit for fear of a crash. CCTV footage revealed that Bully and her 2 children eventually got out of the BMW. 40 minutes later, Bully arrived where the vehicle had been abandoned with the police still there. When questioned by law enforcement, she provided a false name, claiming she'd been at a party and was recovering her stolen vehicle. During her first court appearance, she pleaded guilty to dangerous driving. The defense attorney, Khalid Missouri, said that Bully had been in a controlling, long-term relationship. Missouri added that the man was in the car at the time of the incident and that Bully didn't know he was wanted. During her sentencing at Southampton Crown Court in April of 2022, she was given an 8-month suspended sentence and banned from driving for a year. Number 4. Harley Guerra. In May of 2023, Australian man Harley Guerra was charged in connection with the death of his friend in Melbourne. Earlier that year, the 22-year-old had been charged with multiple vehicle theft, driving and firearm offenses. Investigators believe that Guerra, while out on bail, broke into a Mulgrave mechanic in the early hours of May the 7th of 2023. He absconded in a BMW, which was one of 28 cars later reported stolen from the business. Later that day, Guerra and his friend, 31-year-old Eamon Fatho, traveled to Caroline Springs. An argument arose between Fatho and 2 occupants of a Mitsubishi, during which the former kicked and punched the vehicle before it drove off. Fatho then ran back to the BMW and Guerra gave chase, ramming the Mitsubishi 3 times, causing it to spin around. The 15-minute pursuit ended when the Mitsubishi crashed into the bollards on Vaucluse Boulevard in Taylor Hill. The BMW subsequently pulled up behind it, at which point either Fatho or Guerra allegedly yelled abusive threats. One of the occupants of the Mitsubishi emerged and fired a sawn-off shotgun through the BMW's window. Fatho was shot in the chest while Guerra fled on foot. Emergency services found Fatho in the vehicle and executed life-saving procedures, but he ultimately succumbed to his injuries. 2 days later, one of the occupants of the Mitsubishi surrendered himself to the authorities. The 42-year-old Caroline Springs man was released pending further inquiries. Guerra was arrested on May the 11th after police intercepted him in a stolen Volkswagen SUV in Mulgrave. He was facing charges of conduct endangering life, dangerous driving, and car theft. Number 3. Lorenzo Quezada Pacheco and Daisy Donna Lopez. Man and woman from Colorado were were arrested for allegedly carrying out a robbery in Plateville just after midnight on December the 21st of 2020. According to local police, Lorenzo Quezada Pacheco and Daisy Donna Lopez, at the time in their early 20s, attempted to steal a car from a home in the 100 block of Plowshare Lane. When the owner of the vehicle confronted them, Quezada Pacheco pointed a gun at him and fired once but missed. The man, who almost got hit, returned fire with his own firearm. During the course of the ensuing shootout, the man's home and vehicle sustained extensive damage. Quezada Pacheco continued to fire additional rounds as he and Lopez fled in a truck. At the same time, police were responding to reports about the vehicle theft in progress. Officers reportedly heard at least 3 gunshots while en route to the scene. The suspect vehicle sped past a patrol car, almost striking it in the process. Having received a description of the getaway vehicle, police tailed it. Lopez, who was behind the wheel, blew through a stop sign and drove the wrong way on US Route 85. With speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour, she attempted to collide with oncoming traffic. Eventually, she crashed in the 330 block of Shenandoah Way in Loch Buoy, where she and Quezada Pacheco left the vehicle and ran. Police set up a perimeter around the neighborhood where the suspect stole another vehicle. This time, Quezada Pacheco drove but ultimately crashed into a parked car. Quezada Pacheco and Lopez were then arrested. They were facing at least 11 charges, including attempted first-degree murder, attempted aggravated robbery, motor vehicle theft, and felony eluding. Recent updates indicated that the two were still awaiting trial. Number 2. Cristina Ballesteros. The police in Redding, California, were called to the area of South Bonneview Road and Bacelli Lane on August 7th of 2022. Dispatchers had received reports of a reckless driver in a stolen silver sedan shortly before 7:30 p.m. The driver of the vehicle, 25-year-old Cristina Ballesteros, was traveling on the wrong side of the road and into oncoming traffic while allegedly intoxicated. According to police, Ballesteros busted through 2 fences before entering a parking lot near Eastside Road and South Bonneview Road. She was reportedly drifting around gas pumps, nearly striking pedestrians and cars before hitting a police patrol vehicle. Ballesteros' sedan ultimately high-centered near Highway 273 and North Street in Anderson. As the wheels spun, a fire was subsequently sparked under the car. Officers used beanbag rounds to break the windows of the vehicle, and a K9 helped take the woman into custody. Ballesteros was charged with car theft, reckless evasion, impaired driving, and assaulting a police K9. Number 1. Blur Anise de la Rosa and Ashley Messias. Early on June the 3rd of 2019, 5 Texas women led deputies on a speedy chase that culminated in downtown San Antonio. At approximately 2 a.m., law enforcement tried to pull over an SUV near Somerset Road and Loop 1604. The vehicle then sped away, leading officers on a chase for more than 20 miles. Upon reaching the parking lot of a hotel near Cesar Chavez and South Santa Rosa, the SUV started going around in circles. The vehicle crashed into a curb, forcing 5 of its occupants to continue their escape on foot. Officers eventually found each of them and took them into custody. 2 of the suspects were identified as Blur Anise de la Rosa and Ashley Messias. All 5 were accused of evading arrest, speeding, reckless driving, and possibly narcotics charges. Thanks for watching. Would you rather never drive above 50 miles per hour or always be the last one to board a plane? Let us know in the comments section below.